Hello, Maniacs, and welcome back to another episode of Cult Classic Mania. I am your host, Matthew, and before this episode starts, I would just like to take a few minutes to say thank you to Nick and Ashley from Copulators Die First. I really appreciate you guys having me on the show, and I love talking about John Carpenter's The Thing. It's one of my favorite John Carpenter movies, probably, besides Halloween. And if you're just now migrating over here from Copulators, thank you for taking the time out of your day to check us out. And if you've been listening to us for a while, go ahead and rate and review wherever you listen to us, just whatever platform you listen to us on. And once you have done that, once you've given that 5-star rating, go ahead and email me at cultclassicmania@gmail.com with the screenshot of the review or the rating. And go ahead and give me your full name or just your first and last name, and I'll shout you out on the show for the next episode. And with all that being said, I hope you enjoy this week's episode of Conquest from 1983.
We come in peace.
Hey, fuck ass, give me a beer!
Yeah, welcome back to the cinema. This is not for the typical. Time to feed the occipital lobe with the films that I call my home. Buckle up, settle in, we'll be breaking down a bit. Got a new take, make an old film relevant. But to give attention to the unsung revenants of the film industry, that's a wrap, let's riff.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Cult Classic Mania.
Hello, Maniacs, and welcome back to another episode of Cult Classic Mania. If you are just now tuning in for the first time from Copulators, we are a podcast dedicated to the low-budget disasters that we all know and love. Not all of them are low-budget, but they definitely can be disasters. I am your host, Matthew, and this week we are talking about Conquest from 1983. And goddamn, this is a disaster. We had a streak of good movies, but it's time to do a bad one. And this movie is awful, but I think I love it at the same time. And I'm not sure yet. I think I'll make my decision towards the end of the film whenever we're done talking about it. But yeah, this movie is a fucking disaster. Again, if you're from Copulators and you don't know what we're about, we're a cult cinema podcast that talk about the underbelly of Hollywood, basically. We don't always just talk about horror. We talk about fantasy. We talk about science fiction. We, of course, talk about horror. We talk about exploitation films or very obscure movies that we will eventually get into. Again, I sort of like going into the underbelly of the Hollywood industry and maybe movies that were kind of passed through and maybe not get the recognition that they deserve. And hopefully you can maybe find new movies that you like to watch and not just horror. Just kind of branch out in your viewing history, I guess. But yeah, let's dive right into this thing. Conquest is directed by Lucio Fulci, and Fulci was a prolific Italian director back in the 80s, even earlier before that. He was mostly known for horror, although he tried to have his go at fantasy film. However, again, we'll look into it more, but the Conquest was sort of a fail for him. You may know him from City of the Living Dead, the popular zombie film, or the zombie franchise, and Manhattan Baby. This movie was written by Giovanni Di Clemente, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, and he is mostly known for Spanish movies, Spanish films, if you will, or Spanish soap operas, but one of the things that he is known for is Let's Hope It's a Girl and The Rogues. I haven't seen either of those films, and I don't plan on it, because I don't really like dramas in the first place. One of the funniest attributes of this film is a majority of the actors and the actresses, they are mainly known for Spanish dramas, or they were in the Spanish soap opera circuit on TV, and no one was really a big name actor or actress, if you will. But starring George Riviero, who plays Mace, he's one of Ilias's companions during the journey. He is known for the movie Killing Machine and Deathmatch. Andrea Occupante, who plays Ilias, he is known for the movie The New York Ripper, A Blade in the Dark, and Conrad Martin, who plays Zorro, who is known for the movie Cobra, and Sabrina Ziani, who plays in Blue Island and 2020 Texas Gladiators. So another thing to note is this movie was released in multiple different years and multiple different countries. In the US, it was released April 6, 1984. In the UK, it was released May of 1984. Mexico, August 15th, 1985. And in Italy, June 2nd, 1983. I don't know how many of you actually watched the movie before I release episodes, but if you did, you will notice that there are multiple different versions of this film floating around on the internet. I believe the version that I watched was the 35mm film of the version, and it was a fucking terrible decision at that. That I couldn't make out what was happening throughout half the movie. I'll try to get those parts out the best I can. And there was a Japanese dub version, I believe. There was an Italian version that I found on Tubi, and I think Amazon had it, and I think you had to pay for it. Don't pay for this movie. Go ahead and just watch it on YouTube. It's not worth paying whatever it was, the $2.99 or whatever it was for Amazon rental. Also, fun fact, this movie, again, it looks grainy as fuck whenever you start to watch it. You're like, man, I'm going to go find a different version of it. Maybe the other version looks better. No, none of them look good. Fun fact, though, it's grainy as fuck for the reason that they used a fog machine throughout the entire movie. You're like, is my screen just foggy? Is there something wrong with my screen? Do I need to get it fixed? No, they have a fog machine whenever there's no fog that's needed or necessary. And they just have it playing throughout the entire goddamn movie. And this is filmed on a 35mm camera. And still, the quality is awful. I love 35mm film, but the quality is just awful. And the sound reminds me of a horribly warped vinyl record. You know, whenever you go to the record store and buy a used record, and whenever you put it on, you're like this. You look at it in the light, you notice the lines, all the etchings are just scratched to all hell, and you put it on, it just sounds like utter shit. This is what that movie sounded like. According to the Conquest IMDb page, the other working title for this film was Mace the Outcast. Mace, he's one of Ilias's companions, however, he's not the main protagonist. Well, he is the main protagonist, but Ilias is the main focus of the film. So why he was in the alternate title to begin with, I have no idea. I think they used that title in Japan. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what I read. But if you have an hour and 25 minutes to kill, I guess you should watch this film. Or you can just avoid it entirely. It's up to you. If you got an hour and 25 minutes to kill, go for it. Whatever. It's your life. Do whatever you want. About this film, this movie is essentially a terrible, low-budget ripoff of... Think of Lord of the Rings mixed with Conan the Barbarian and Star Wars, and somehow they merged all of those movies together in books and piled them into one god-awful movie. But a young man is set out on a journey with a magical bow and arrow with his companion Mace. He embarks on a mystical journey through a mystical land to rid of all evil. And again, he joins forces with the outlaw Mace to take down an evil, hell-bent queen on claiming the magic bow is for evil. Oh boy, let's get into this fucking thing, shall we? We get an extremely long intro with the most 80s synth music ever. And again, this is supposed to be a fantasy film. Why is there 80s synth music playing? But you get the 80s synth throughout the entire movie, and it's fucking awful. It's literally the worst thing you could probably ever hope for. I'm going to insert it in because I had to sit through the torture of listening to this film, listening to this music, and I guess you're going to have to sit through it too. So enjoy that, I guess. It's Ilias, and he is surrounded by 9 men and 2 women, and Ilias is receiving his special breastplate and heading off on his journey, and a man is talking to Ilias, giving him a speech. This speech is incredibly long. I wrote only half of it down because it's literally a 5 to 8 minute speech that I just did not give a shit about it towards halfway through it. But you get a speech saying, "You have chosen the path of courage and sacrifice, a journey to the very heart of dark evil domain. Many blessings unto you, my son. You're an example of bravery among men. Come back safely and govern us with your wisdom and experience." And throughout this entire speech, you get this terrible echo delay effect whenever he's talking, and it's the most obnoxious effect. I guess it's sort of needed for that part, but they have that echo effect throughout the entire movie, and it's just, there's no need for it. It's just obnoxious background noise. And, you know, the man who is talking to Ilias, he summons the magic bow and arrow for Ilias, and the bow is named Kronos, I believe that was the bow's name, and off Ilias goes into his boat. I had to keep checking the time at this point because I wasn't sure if the intro credits have rolled through yet. And it takes a good maybe 3 to 8 minutes until we get a credits and title card. Also at this point, I was wondering if I was watching the wrong film or watching the wrong version because the quality is so bad I can't really tell what's going on. But it looks like the evil queen, whose name is Okron, who's played by Sabrina Siani, and her minions are chanting along with her. It looks like they're praying and doing some type of rain dance. And we get another scene where the queen's minions, who honestly they look like a cheap Chewbacca knockoff from Star Wars, and it's a mix between that and I guess an orc from Lord of the Rings by the way they act. And they are just harassing the landowners nearby. The Chewbacca lookalikes explain to the landowner that they don't care about the offer that he is offering the Chewbacca lookalikes, and they still want to kill their people. They proceed to kill the man, and somehow chopping off the top part of his head to expose the brain. And they don't show this, it's off screen. And the Chewbacca lookalikes, they proceed to sacrifice the woman by grabbing her by her hair and taking her to the queen. They proceed to grab both of her legs and rip her far apart to where it's cutting her body in half. It's not necessary and it's really fucking gross, but whatever. The queen then starts to eat the brains of the woman, and they sacrificed her, and the Chewbacca lookalikes proceed to get high for some reason. I'm not sure what they're smoking, but they start to snort something up their nose and end up getting high. That apparently I was watching the alternate version too, because I noticed on Reddit somebody was talking about this film, and they were saying that there is an alternate version where the queen is constantly into cannibalism and starts to eat people's brains for some reason, because that's what she feeds off as, I guess. I don't know, but that's what somebody on Reddit was saying, that there's multiple different versions of this film, and I just happened to be watching that film because I like to fucking torture myself, apparently. Oh boy, it fades into the next scene as the evil queen is having an orgasm in her sleep for some reason, and the snake, I guess, is eating her out. I'm not entirely sure. And also, she is naked throughout the entire movie, and they don't explain that whatsoever. Most of the women in this film are naked too, and they don't explain that at all, but the men are clothed. And I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just a strange little fact there. I'm, again, not entirely sure. And it fades into a random woman getting water from the river and drinking it. Meanwhile, a snake is sneaking up on her, ready to make its move. This is when Ilias comes to the rescue by shooting an arrow through the snake's head. However, the woman is more freaked out by him than she is by the snake and proceeds to run away through the river. And more of the evil queen's minions, who are hiding in the tall grass, they start to surround Ilias, and they attempt to attack him. However, Mace, who is always coming to save his ass, comes in and he just attacks all of them, and he's able to scare them all away. And Ilias, he proceeds to ask, he's like, "Who are you?" And this is the worst dialogue ever. This is the most god-awful dialogue I've ever heard in my life. It was like me is saying, like, casting for a film, and someone was like, "Hey, you want to read this part?" Sure, I don't have any acting credits whatsoever, and I've never acted in my entire life, but fuck it, how about I go ahead and give it a go? And this is when Ilias, he asks, "Who are you?" And Mace responds, "My enemies call me Mace." And Ilias follows up, "And your friends?" Mace responds, "I don't have any friends." And he mentions the sign because he has a little tattoo on his forehead, and it says it's a sign that it means every man is his enemy. I also forgot to mention that Ilias is supposed to be the main protagonist in this film, and he's the one going off the journey. He just happens to meet up with Mace at this point, but for some reason, Mace is always coming to save Ilias. It's sort of like he's the protector and he's the main guy, but they create Ilias as like he is the main guy that's saving everyone. And mind you, they're trying to make him look like a Conan the Barbarian, sort of. And Conan is sort of buff, he's strong, he's always the leader of wherever he is fighting. However, Ilias is the exact opposite of Conan. I don't know if they just got the scripts mixed up or what, but he is not the guy that you should go for to save everyone or protect them from evil. We get more of those Chewbacca lookalikes, and they are back at the Queen's throne and explaining what happened to them and who attacked them, saying it was Mace's and Ilias's arrows that hurt his leg, one of the Chewbacca's men's legs, and everyone is apparently enthralled by the arrows, and the queen proceeds to pull out the arrow of one of the men's legs, and she just stares at it for a really long time. Also, with the Chewbacca lookalikes, they say for some of them, it's sort of like the orcs where they don't really speak coherent sentences, and they just mumble or groan. And there's other times where the Chewbacca lookalikes speak full-on sentences. It's just, oh my god, it's fucking aggravating. They don't stay in character at all half the time. And this is when the hunt is on for Mason Ilias. The queen orders the Chewbacca lookalikes to capture Ilias and his women of the country or wherever the land that he resides in. Meanwhile, Ilias and Mace are going about their journey, and Mace spots one of his the queen's Chewbacca lookalikes out alone, and Mace shoots an arrow directly through his chest. He takes the animal that he was carrying on his back as food, and they're back at the cave that they use for shelter and cook the animal. While they're eating, they hear a noise outside, and it literally sounds just like someone hitting the boom mic overhead. It's the worst. It's literally just a thud. It sounds like someone smacking the microphone on accident. And later that night, the boys are sleeping soundly, and all of a sudden, the flame starts to get bigger and bigger from the fire that they started. And the Chewbacca lookalikes somehow made the fire bigger, and they don't show what's happening. And Ilias and Mace are frightened and end up falling down the cave through a bigger hole, and they are apparently unconscious. Anyway, the Queen's orgasm snake shows up and scares Ilias and Mace, and uses the sort of, I think they also call it a mace, where you swing it, and it's just a ball, it's just a stick and a ball and a chain, and he is swinging it around just to get rid of the snake. Later that night, the duo finally makes it out of the cave, and there's a Chewbacca lookalike right outside making a fire. He is so distracted that the duo ends up taking the animal that the Chewbacca was trying to cook for dinner, and Mace takes the animal back to his cave and finally not far from where they were at, and him and his family feast upon the animal. Meanwhile, the daughter of the group keeps trying to check out Ilias seductively while her mouth is covered in what seems to be blood around her mouth. Why he finds this attractive, I don't know, but later that night, the daughter wakes up Ilias and hoping to get it on, if you know what I mean, and she is attacked and killed by a group of the Chewbaccas. And he calls for Mace's help, and they fuck Mace up too. They don't take no pity on Mace, and Mace is knocked unconscious again, and he wakes up and notices that his entire family had been tortured and killed. The Chewbacca lookalikes, they have been captured. They have captured Ilias, and they have tied him up like a pig who is being roasted above a fire. Mace regains consciousness, and he again comes to the rescue to save Ilias, a Chewbacca lookalike. He attempts to sneak up behind Mace, but he quickly responds and knocks him out, and he starts to throw around his makeshift weapon, and somehow causes a mini explosion. I'm not entirely sure, but it does, and Mace fucks everyone up again. But two of the Chewbacca lookalikes, they attempt to go after Mace's leg to bite it off, but again, he's able to get away. Meanwhile, the Queen Okron is back in her evil cave with the Chewbacca lookalike tied down. It seems like the Chewbacca lookalike is dying, and on her other Chewbacca minions throw the body off the stone bed after he passes. And later that evening, it cuts to Okron laying on the stone bed, and she seems to be having a terrible nightmare and dreaming about Ilias killing her. Okron summons a man named Zorro, and she orders him to kill Ilias, and in return she will give up her body for all eternity up to him, and he agrees and says, "I will make them suffer 1,000 deaths," and they have this obnoxious fake deep voice with terrible echo effect to add on to it. The dialogue was so bad at this point. This is probably the peak of the awful dialogue, and I had trouble keeping up and didn't really care to write anything down. Meanwhile, Ilias and Mace are back at a beach gathering wood for a fire, and Ilias asks Mace about Okron, the evil queen, but I feel like Ilias at this point should have known about Okron before going on the journey, because he was setting out to destroy all evil and coming back with wisdom for his people. Whatever, and the dialogue's awful again, mind you, this is at the peak of the awful dialogue, and he's like talking to Ilias, Ilias is talking to Mace, and Ilias is just asking about Okron, and in response, Mace is like, don't worry about it, man. You don't need to worry about Okron. She won't bother you anymore. She's literally been bothering you the entire movie, and her minions have been going after you this entire time. This is when the Chewbacca lookalikes pull a sneak attack on Ilias and Mace by shooting the worst looking fake arrows I've ever seen as they duck for cover. These arrows look like if you were to cut out pieces of paper and draw arrows on them and just start throwing them, hoping that they go over their heads. This is what they look like, and it's probably the worst effect throughout this entire movie. There are a lot of them, but this is probably the worst one. And Ilias and Mace are shooting the worst arrows ever, and eventually evading these ugly fuckers. And poor Ilias gets an arrow to the back, and Mace pulls it out while they float away on a makeshift raft. And Ilias, he's freaking out about how it's the worst wound he's ever had, and it's the worst pain he's ever felt. And he proceeds to say, "I feel like I'm dying already," and the wound starts to randomly shooting out gross pus. And Mace tells Ilias to stay strong. It felt like an inspirational quote, and they're just like holding up her inspirational quote cards up in front of Mace, and he's just reading them off. He's like, "Stay strong, man. It'll get better from here. I promise." Blah, blah, blah. As always, Mace is coming back to the rescue for Ilias, and he sets him back up on land and creates a fire for Ilias to rest by. He explains that he is going to the valley alone, and he will be back by morning with a special plant to cure Ilias of his wounds. And it cuts back and forth from showing Ilias's gross injuries with bugs and maggots crawling over him, and Mace attempting to go through the valley. However, Mace is having to deal with the Chewbacca lookalikes. They start to gang up on him and try to fight him. However, Mace is able to get out, and he is met with another man who is Zorro again, attempting to kill Mace, but he's able to make it out. It shows Okron worshipping the guy that she sent to kill the two for some reason. There's no reason for this scene at all, because it just quickly cuts back to where they're at the beachside fire. And Mace is tending to Ilias's wounds. I guess he went and got the special plan that he needed with a magical leaf that Mace has retrieved and saved Ilias's life, and apparently this caused him to heal overnight. And the next morning, Mace is talking to Ilias, saying that he should leave, but Ilias is saying that he wants to head back to his homeland and wants Mace to go with him to help. However, Mace refuses, and Ilias gives him a gift as a bow as a gift for saving his life. Again, Mace is really stubborn, and he refuses the gift. Mace is starting to make his journey back home, and he is up in the snowy mountains, and we are meeting a new obnoxious monster again, and it looks like the Abominable Snowman, who can see green only and make the most annoying sounds ever. It was painful. They made the most obnoxious noises ever, and I don't like high-pitched noises, and that's what they proceeded to do throughout the entire movie whenever they show these characters. They capture him by throwing a gigantic net over Mace and rolling him up as if he was a bug. Ilias comes to Mace's rescue with his sweet blue glow-in-the-dark arrows and kills the Abominable Snowman lookalikes. These arrows are, again, the worst effect ever. It just looks like a glow stick, on 4th of July, whenever you got those glow sticks, or whenever you go to a dance or whatever, and it's just one of those type of parties. It looks like one of these, just in arrow form. Also, I forgot to mention that this entire scene is in slow motion, and we have to watch it all in real time. And one of the Abominable Snowmen, they start to push Mace off the cliff, and he lands into the cold water. Ilias is able to kill the Abominable Snowman lookalike, and Mace is greeted by a shark while he is in the water and starts to lose consciousness. However, the shark doesn't eat him. They just proceed to cut off the ropes on the wrists and his feet. Fucking really? Anyway, Mace is washed up onto the shore, and Ilias drags him to safety. Again, he is magically okay after this, and he's not injured whatsoever. He fell really far, and he's in cold water. How is he not? How is he not dead? I don't know. Who the fuck knows? And this is when Ilias and Mace are stopping for the night to rest. Ilias and Mace, they find a place to sleep, and Ilias is woken up by a hand grabbing his leg and pulling him into the ground of the cave where they're sleeping. And Mace goes down to look for him, but they can't seem to find him. And there's some type of creature in the cave. This is, again, another one of those moments where it was so grainy that I couldn't see. There was so much fog, I couldn't really tell what it was. And Mace is attempting to fight this creature off. The creature randomly spits him back out with a million bats flying past him. And Mace finds Ilias's body in the cave, but his head is detached from his body. I thought, are they really going to kill off the main character at this point? And it's just, again, I was already lost at this point. You lost me at this movie with this film, and I just didn't give a shit. But it shows Mace staring at Ilias's dead body, and Mace rubbing Ilias's ashes all over him. However, Mace wants to seek revenge for Ilias's death, so he sets out to kill Okron, and literally the last 4 minutes of the film, and it is the most anticlimactic ending ever. However, he kills Okron with the magic arrows in one shot, and it's probably the worst effect ever, and they just spread out entirely. The arrows just shoot out in the stupid glow effect that they use, and bam, that's how the movie ends. There's no fucking climax. Well, there is, but there isn't. And that's how this goddamn movie ends. Wow, this movie was fucking terrible. This movie is a big pile of shit, but I'm not trying to discredit Fulci as a director whatsoever. He's a pretty legendary Italian horror director, but he's just not cut out for fantasy fiction. This movie was fucking terrible. While I do think it's an awful movie, I guess you should go ahead and watch it anyway, because if you want a good laugh, go ahead and watch this film. The dialogue is awful, the music is awful, everything about this film is awful, even the quality of the film is awful. But still, I think you can put it on and have a good laugh if you want to. It's only an hour and 25 minutes. It's a quick breeze. I had fun watching it anyway. Again, a lot of content to talk about. There's so much to shit on about this movie. It's endless. I can go on and on about how awful everything about this film was. And it's so far beyond what the actual description of the film was. And if you look at the cover of the film too, it looks nothing like the movie at all. It's like whenever movie stores were still around back in the day, and you go through like the horror section, or if you go through the fantasy section, and you see a cool ass cover, and you're like, man, I really want to watch this film. It looks awesome. And then you bring it home, and you're like, this is the biggest pile of shit I've ever seen in my life. This is sort of like one of those moments if you were ever to see this film in any movie store. However, I highly doubt that they ever distributed this film, because it is fucking terrible. And I feel sorry for the distribution company that put this film out. I wasn't able to find the actual budget for this film, but I guarantee you they spent a mere $50 or less on the actual production and the overall filming of this movie. I can only imagine what they spent. They probably spent a majority of their budget on the fog machine that they had playing throughout the film. Oh my god, it was so great. Honestly, if you watch it, there's literally a fog machine playing throughout the entire movie. You're like, there's no need for fog right here. Why is there fog? And it's just there. You gotta deal with it if you want to watch this film, I guess. Unfortunately, that was episode 9, and we covered Conquest from 1983. You can watch it, don't watch it, I don't really care. Please watch it free, don't pay for it. You can go ahead and watch it on YouTube. I believe it was on Tubi TV as well. It's a free TV subscription and movies. And I believe on Amazon and archive.org, and also movies123.com. So go ahead and check it out for free if you want to. Go ahead and waste an hour and 25 minutes of your life if you want. And next week we are talking about another disaster for the big 1-0 episode. And we are talking about Malibu Express from 1985. Best way that I can describe Malibu Express is it's basically an hour and 43 minutes of titties, beer, and guns blazing. The cover of the trilogy, because the director who also did this did Branded to Kill, I believe that's the name of the movie, or Ticket to Kill, and Kill to Hawaii or something like that. And the cover of it says Bullets, Babes, and Explosions. So be looking forward to that. Can't you tell that we strive for quality content over here at Cult Classic Mania? I mean, we did Conquest, we're doing Malibu Express next. What can we possibly do next after that? It only gets worse from here, so fucking enjoy that, I guess. Anyway, that was this week's episode, and we talked about Conquest from 1983. You can go ahead and follow the show at facebook.com/Cult Classic Mania. You can follow our new Instagram account at Cult Classic Mania, or you can follow my personal Instagram account at Cult Classic Matthew. And if you feel like supporting us monetarily, you can go ahead and do so by going to patreon.com/Cult Classic Mania. And lastly, please go ahead and rate and review our show on all podcast platforms that you listen to us on, or you can go ahead and go to facebook.com/Cult Classic Mania, and you are able to leave reviews there. And once you have done that, go ahead and take a screenshot of that said review and email me at cultclassicmania@gmail.com. Give me your first name, give me your last name, and I will go ahead and shout you out on the next episode whenever that airs. And you know what? WrestleMania only happens once a year, but Cult Classic Mania happens every goddamn Monday. Oh god, I should probably stop with that outro. Do you guys like that? You probably don't like that. But thank you guys for listening to this week's episode. This has been another installment of Cult Classic Mania, and I'm your host, Matthew. And I will talk to you guys next week for Malibu Express from 1985. Peace out, guys.
We come in peace.
Fuck ass, give me a beer!
Yeah, welcome back to the cinema. This is not for the typical. Time to feed the occipital lobe with the films that I call my home. Buckle up, settle in, we'll be breaking down a bit. Got a new take, make an old film relevant. But to give attention to the unsung revenants of the film industry. That's a wrap, let's riff.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Cult Classic Mania.